Chapter 2, Into the Dark. The old service tunnels beneath the Foundry District smelled like rust and forgotten time. Kael followed Silas down a narrow metal stairway that groaned under their weight, each step taking them deeper into the belly of the city. The air grew thick and warm as they went down. Water dripped somewhere in the dark, making soft sounds that bounced off the walls. Silas carried a heavy bag full of computer parts. He moved carefully on the wet steps. His small light made dancing shadows on the tunnel walls. Kael stayed close behind him, one hand on the rough wall to keep his balance. The data chip felt heavy in his pocket, like it was burning through the cloth. "How much further?" Kael asked. His voice sounded strange in the narrow space. "Almost there," Silas said without looking back. "The main coolant room is just ahead. Nobody comes down here anymore. Too dangerous, they say. Bad air, weak floors, old machines that might still have power." He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Perfect for what we need to do. They reached the bottom of the stairs. A long hallway stretched out in front of them, lined with big pipes that ran along the ceiling. Some of the pipes were broken, hanging down like dead snakes. The floor was covered with puddles that reflected their lights. Kael could hear machines humming somewhere far away, a low sound that made his teeth hurt. "The Foundry District used to make all the computer chips for the whole city," Silas said as they walked. "Big factories, thousands of workers. Then the companies moved everything to space stations where it was cheaper. Left all this behind." He kicked at a piece of broken metal. "Now it's just a place for people like us to hide." They passed several doors, all of them locked or rusted shut. The tunnel got wider as they walked, and Kael could see more pipes and cables running everywhere. Some of them still had lights on them, blinking red or green in the dark. It made him think of the lights on Lysander's implant just before it killed him. "Here," Silas said, stopping at a heavy door marked with warning signs. "This is it." He pulled out a small tool and worked on the lock. After a few minutes, the door opened with a loud click. The room beyond was huge, bigger than Kael had expected. The ceiling was so high that their lights could not reach it. Giant machines filled the space, covered in dust and connected by thick cables. In the center of the room was a large pool that had once held coolant for the machines. Now it was empty except for some dirty water at the bottom. "Welcome to my secret office," Silas said, walking toward a corner where he had set up a work area. There were several computers on a metal table, all of them old but well cared for. Cables ran from the computers to a big power unit that hummed quietly. "I come here when I need to do work that might get me in trouble. The metal walls block most signals, and the old power grid hides what I'm doing." Kael looked around the room. It felt like being inside a sleeping giant. "How did you find this place?" "A friend showed me, years ago, before the companies took over everything, back when people like us could still make a living without hiding." Silas sat down at his computers and started turning them on. "That friend is gone now, caught by corporate security doing something they didn't like. I never saw him again." The computers came to life, filling the dark room with blue light. Silas worked quickly, his fingers moving over the keys like he was playing music. Numbers and letters filled the screens too fast for Kael to read. "Give me the chip," Silas said, holding out his hand. Kael pulled the data chip from his pocket. It was warm from being close to his body. He looked at it for a moment, thinking about Lysander and how he had died to get this information. Then he gave it to Silas. Silas put the chip into one of his computers. The screen changed, showing lines of code that scrolled by quickly. "This is going to take time," he said. "The data is broken up and hidden. Lysander was smart to do it this way, but it makes my job harder." Kael found a place to sit on an old crate. The room was quiet except for the sound of the computers and the distant humming of machines. He watched Silas work and tried not to think about what would happen if they were caught down here. "Tell me about the flaw," Silas said without looking away from his screen. "What exactly did you see when Lysander died?" Kael closed his eyes, but that made the memory worse. He was eating lunch, just sitting there, talking about some new code he was working on. Then he stopped in the middle of a word. His eyes went wide, like he was seeing something terrible. He started shaking, just a little at first, then worse and worse. "How long did it last?" "Maybe 2 minutes. but it felt like hours. Kael opened his eyes and stared at the dark ceiling. He tried to say something near the end. I think he was trying to warn me. Then his implant made a sound like breaking glass, and he was gone. Silas was quiet for a long time. The computers kept working, processing the broken data from Lysander's chip. Finally, he spoke. I've heard stories about implant failures before. Usually it's just the person getting sick or having bad dreams. But what you're talking about, that's different. That's the implant actually killing the brain. The company said it was just a glitch, something that happened to a few people who had old implants. Kael felt anger rising in his chest. But Lysander had the newest model, the one that was supposed to be completely safe. Nothing is completely safe, Silas said. Every piece of technology can be broken or turned into a weapon. The question is whether someone did it on purpose. One of the computers made a soft beeping sound. Silas leaned forward, studying the screen carefully. Got something, he said. The data is still pretty broken, but I can see some patterns. Looks like there were packets of information being sent to Lysander's implant right before it failed. Information that wasn't supposed to be there. Kael stood up and walked over to look at the screen. The code was too complex for him to understand, but he could see that something was wrong. There were lines of text that looked different from the others, like they had been added later. Can you tell where the packets came from? Kael asked. Working on it, Silas said. His fingers moved over the keys again, and new information appeared on the screen. This is strange. The packets are coming from inside Synergenica's own network, but they're using a path that shouldn't exist, like someone built a secret door into the system. Kael felt his heart start beating faster. A secret door that only certain people would know about. Exactly. Silas pointed at a series of numbers on the screen. These are access codes, high-level ones. Whoever sent these packets had permission to reach any implant in the network. They could have picked anyone to be their target. But they picked Lysander. Why? Silas was quiet for a moment, thinking. Maybe because he was looking into the flaw. Maybe because he was getting too close to the truth. He turned to look at Kael. Or maybe because they knew you would see it happen. Maybe you were the real target all along. The idea hit Kael like a cold wind. He had been so focused on Lysander's death that he had not thought about why it happened in front of him. You think they wanted me to see it? Think about it, Silas said. You're one of the people who built the Cortex Link system. You know how it works better than almost anyone. If they wanted to scare someone away from looking into the flaw, you would be a good choice. Kael walked back to his crate and sat down hard. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. But it didn't scare me away. It made me want to find out what really happened. Maybe they didn't know you as well as they thought, Silas said. Or maybe they wanted you to run. Maybe having you disappear was part of their plan. The computers beeped again, and Silas turned back to his work. More code appeared on the screens, and Kael could see that Silas was getting excited about something. This is big, Silas said. Really big. The packets weren't just random data. They were instructions, commands telling the implant to change how it worked. And look at this. He pointed to a section of code that was highlighted in red. These commands were designed to cause exactly the kind of failure that killed Lysander. Kael stood up again, his hands shaking. So it was murder. Someone used the implant network to kill him. Not just murder, Silas said. This code could be sent to any implant at any time. Thousands of people could die, and it would look like accidents or equipment failures. The perfect weapon. The room was quiet, except for the humming of machines. Kael thought about all the people in the city who had implants. All the people who trusted the technology he had helped create. They were all walking around with potential bombs in their heads, and they didn't even know it. We have to stop this, Kael said. We have to warn people. Silas shook his head. Warn them how? If we go public with this, Synergenica will say we're lying. They'll say we made it all up to hurt their business, and then they'll make us disappear. So what do? Silas saved his work and started shutting down the computers. We get more proof. We find out who's really behind this and why they're doing it, and we stay alive long enough to expose them. He pulled the data chip from his computer and handed it back to Kael. But first, we get out of here. I've been running hot for too long. If anyone is looking for us, they might have noticed the power usage. Kael put the chip back in his pocket. It felt heavier now, loaded with terrible knowledge. As they packed up Silas's equipment, he thought about Lysander and all the other people who might die if they failed. The walk back through the tunnels felt longer than before. Every shadow looked like it might be hiding an enemy. Every sound made Kael jump. By the time they reached the surface, he was covered in sweat despite the cool air. They came up through a maintenance hatch in an alley behind an old factory. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still dark with clouds. Silas looked around carefully before climbing all the way out. "Where do we go now?" Kael asked. "Somewhere safe to think," Silas said. "I know a place, but first we need to talk about what we learned down there, because if I'm right about what's happening, this is just the beginning." They walked through the empty streets, two small figures in a city full of secrets. Behind them, the entrance to the tunnels disappeared into shadow, hiding the evidence of their discovery. But the knowledge they carried was like a light in the darkness, dangerous and bright, showing them a path they were not sure they wanted to follow. The hunt for the truth had begun in earnest, and Kael knew there would be no turning back. Somewhere in the city, people were planning more deaths, more murders disguised as accidents. And somewhere else, the next victim was going about their normal life, not knowing that death was hiding in the technology they trusted. The weight of that knowledge pressed down on Kael as they disappeared into the maze of streets and shadows. The real fight was just beginning. Length: medium chapter completed, approx 2,200 words. Assessment: successfully continued the investigation into the neural flaw while building tension and revealing key plot elements. Maintained focus on character development and the growing conspiracy. Pacing balanced technical discovery with emotional impact. Editor notes: arc alignment. Advanced synapse collapse by revealing the deliberate nature of the neural flaw and expanding the scope of the threat. Character development. Deepened Kael's determination and Silas's cautious expertise while building their partnership. Style consistency. Maintained basic vocabulary level throughout, while preserving the cyberpunk atmosphere and tension. Connections to previous chapters. Direct continuation from Chapter 1's ending, following through on the descent to Sublevel 7. Structural considerations. Built revelation gradually through technical discovery, balanced action with character moments, ended with clear forward momentum.